suppose a couple of things. I mean, one is that I mean, there's 41 colleges, and some, but by no means all, are engaged in that debate at local level and putting their wherewithal on the table. And it's working very well that they're participating in the employability pipeline and delivering locally agreed outcomes. That happens, but the problem is that not all colleges are equal and not all local partnerships are equal. So I think that maybe there's an issue in terms of making sure that that there's equal opportunity for these things to be negotiated in different areas of Scotland. So I think that there's a disparity around the country, and some of you will recognise that. The second thing is that there's an immense amount of knowledge and local engagement, particularly with employers, and phenomenal ability to get people from one place to another. That's to get people into employment, and I think that's a massively underutilised resource. And the third point is that actually colleges, as I said before, actually have less ability to do that now, and I think that that's a bit of a short-sighted position. A few years ago, in fact, at the beginning of the previous Parliament, I was at an event, and I can't remember what it was, but Alex Salmon stood up in front and he said, we've got a major problem because we invest as much as any other developed country in developing skills, and in fact, as a country, we have skills to as high a level as any of our competitors, broadly speaking, but our productivity is crap. He says, I don't understand why that is. And he said, the worst thing is that you, the educators, don't understand why it is either. And actually, our problem is trying to fill that gap. It's trying to make our skills work in the economy. And I think that possibly linking some of these things on and using some of the existing skills and capacity within colleges to deliver on some of these programs needs to be re-examined as we go forward, because I think that at the moment that's being forgotten about.
Okay, thanks. Can I move to the employability side? I'll start with you, Etta. I mean, again, Damien did mention the integration of employment and skills involving Jobcentre Plus and Skills Beyond Scotland. Do you see more scope for that, drawing in a wider range of skills partners?
Yes, I think we've got somebody from the STS advisors in most of our job centres now across Scotland, either on a day or 2 days a week in some of the bigger offices, and that's proving to be really useful, not just for the advisors in cross-fertilisation of their knowledge of what's happening at a local level, but also in actually having a joined-up debate at a local through the community planning partnerships, and especially if colleges are around the same table, being a bit more innovative, because I have examples of where we've been more innovative with having that joined up approach through the colleges maybe being able to draw down funding that perhaps previously they hadn't thought of drawing down funding from Scottish Government or from national government that has an employability attached to it.
Okay. Looking at it from your point of view, you're on the employability side. For some of your clients, skills development is going to be really important. Maybe not be skills, but for some of your clients, how to get them into jobs, and keep them in jobs, progress them in jobs. How does it look from the angle? Are you doing better in terms of what's happening in Scotland?
Certainly from what we can see so far, and I certainly think that there's some work still to be done in terms of people who actually move into employment. I know we talk about modern apprenticeships, and for a work programme, customers, that might not be an angle that we can take them down, whilst they might actually want to participate in that. And I think that I understand there are the political aspect of Skills Development Scotland, but we do need to make sure we try and move those young people who, and those, again, the other thing for modern apprenticeships is that for over 25s there are very few and in very limited sectors. And again, it would be an opportunity for us to look at how best to develop that. We, running the work programme, will give both Ingeus and ourselves information that will be some 220,000 people that we're going to engage with over the next 5 years. Across the whole of Scotland, I think that we'll have some fantastic data on individuals in terms of what their job goals are, what they want to do, and how they're progressing. And again, if we can work with Skills Development Scotland to share that data to help support whatever we want to do in the future, then surely that's going to be a good thing.
I think the question, I suppose, going back to Kate's point, is probably one of alignment. So it's about aligning potentially funding. It's probably about aligning service delivery, and I think it's maybe about taking it a stage further and maybe aligning expectations and the aspirations that we have for the entire service delivery that is under the governance of employment, skills and education, and looking for the achievement of a bit more of a common outcome. We have everywhere more limited resources than we've had in years gone by. That's just a reality of the state of the economy, and what that means is that we need to try and find ways of working a bit smarter and applying that resource in a more coherent fashion. And there are some signs of optimism. I think some of the progress that's been made between SDS and Jobcentre Plus in the last few years is very welcome, and I hope we see lots of opportunities for taking that forward. But the reality is the end goal for us, I suppose, is about having more people in the workforce than there are at the moment, more people who are flourishing and developing in the workforce than there are at the moment, maybe doing away with that kind of dichotomy about having people that work harder but work less productively that kind of was identified in the Yeates review a few years ago. And I think that is about looking at where best you can take some of that funding and deploy that funding. And we have, as Helena mentioned, a bizarre situation that probably about 75–80% of the clients that will go through the work programme over the next 5 years are over the age of 25. And if we look at where some of the funding that's available, by no means all, but some of the funding that's available, it's just not aligned there. And you know, it's where it is aligned is very sensible, but we need to look at what we want to achieve going forward.
I think Paul's really hit the nail on the head from a large employer perspective. I think it's the cohesion of the offer, and in a Scottish context, and my limited experience so far, there seems to be that dichotomy without the cohesion of the offer between the skills and employment side that you see south of the border, quite frankly. And different.
How is it different south of the border?
In terms of the offer being able to come from organisations about people who could enter the labour market as a potential employee with a potential of a skills package going alongside it, as opposed to being two different agencies pursuing, and sometimes pursuing different targets for different reasons, without the money actually coming together to sort of say, well, how do we make this work?
Oh, Helena, you see I guess sense difference north and south of the border on this?
Yeah, no, I think there is a significant difference. Skills Funding Agency does almost sit hand in glove with DWP in terms of their procuring. And of course that makes it more difficult in Scotland because it is a devolved issue in terms of skills. So it's made it much more aligned and integrated, but that doesn't mean to say that we can't overcome that. I think we just need to make sure that we have constant dialogue with Skills Development Scotland and those agencies that are participating in it.
Not quite the question I thought I was going to ask, but Edward Harkin's here in an independent capacity this afternoon. My question really was all about, as well as the economic recession we're facing just now, and the work programme reforms complete with controversies and all, we're also seeing quite fundamental reforms of the housing benefit programme. One of the consequences is going to be that poorer tenants in the midst of a housing shortage are going to have to move around constantly seeking the cheapest of housing. We're also now increasingly seeing attempts to destabilise social-rented housing tenancies. And recently, at a series of Chatham House discussions that I co-hosted, we heard a lot from both public and private sector developers about the increasing acuteness of economic geography across the UK, whereby investment and development is increasingly only going to the very most attractive projects and the very most attractive and already economically successful locations across the UK. And if you take all of those and many other factors together, I'm wondering to what extent the panel agree. Paul used an interesting word, alignment. I'm wondering to what extent the panel agree that we're running the risk here of the perfect storm of policy coming together, and we end up with a permanently destabilised, poorest section of society in a near nomadic existence, pursuing cheap housing, short-term prospects, wherever they can find them.
The question.
Happy to kick off, Allan. Yeah, I think we could talk ourselves into an early grave on this, and will I have a go? A really interesting report that came out last year from Demos called The Anatomy of Youth by Celia Hannon and Charlie Timms, and there was a quite a significant statement they made in the core summary. They said young people in 2010 are in a particularly unstable position. There are real inequalities within their generation as well as between them and older cohorts. They're also poised to inherit a set of chronic social, economic and political challenges that their national governments will be unable to solve without their energetic engagement. Not least among these is the largest budget deficit as a proportion of GDP of all OECD member nations. And that kind of, you know, if we want to talk ourselves into the most depressing position, gives it quite a summary of it. I think the flip side of this is to say, well, what do we know we have to face into by way of opportunity that's almost a guarantee? And there's both challenges and threats to this. So the progression to the low-carbon economy is a threat if we don't deal with it. But if we become the experts in the world at dealing with it, then we create a global infrastructure that's similar to the North Sea oil. And it's about turning some of these challenges on its head. I mean, caring for older generations, social care, along with the transition to low-carbon economies, are going to be an absolute given. What are we doing today to think about, as a country, how we organize ourselves and invest to secure opportunity from that and become the best in the world at managing into the challenges of social care? And you can go on. So for me, I think it's about flipping these on their heads and saying, of course, we're facing into multiple challenges, but what's the energetic engagement that we create now to come up with the solution that's going to be the sustainable growth opportunity for us in the future? So that's my kind of